I'll be keeping my remarks fairly brief because our guest Jocelyn Bamford, who's from the Coalition of Concerned Manufacturers and Automatic Coating, is here in the middle of our threesome here on the desk, and Mark Josephs of Kisco Products, which manufactures Kisco freezies. They create jobs here in Ontario, yet like so many manufacturers, they're struggling with electricity prices. Last year, they saw their hydro bill go up $100,000, yet they don't qualify for the Liberal government's latest hydro scheme. So they're here to speak to the effect that the government's electricity policies have had on manufacturers in Ontario and some of the problems with programs like the Industrial Conservation Initiative, or the ICI program that the government's been talking about, that is supposed to be there to help companies like Mark's and like Jocelyn's as well. The patchwork quilt of programs that we now have in Ontario that the government has set up has too many hydro users falling through the cracks. 5 weeks since their photo op, we still don't actually have the legislation outlining how they're actually going to make it work. And what we're finding out is that it's not going to work for a lot of companies, a lot of manufacturers. So with that, I will hand it off to Mark Josephs, and Mark is the Chief Executive Officer and the owner of Kisco Products in Woodbridge area. Is that the easiest way to identify
where you're from? Absolutely, Todd.
Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Todd. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. Thought what I'd do is just share a quick little background. We're a family-run business. We manufacture freezies, so it's the right time of year. My parents moved to Canada Christmas Eve of 1975. And in 1977, so 40 years ago, my parents started the Kisco Products, the freezy business here. And throughout the years, we've had many, many challenges. As small business owners, family-run business, you face competitive pressures, financial pressures, staffing issues, all sorts of things. But it's been interesting over the last few years. Apart from those things that you have to normally deal with as a business, one of the biggest challenges we've been facing has been the regulations, the high hydro, all the things being put through, the mismanagement, really, of our energy policies here in the province of Ontario. And really, when you think about it, this is really one of the best places to live, Canada and the province of Ontario, an amazing place to live. But as a business, I feel like we are fighting a battle not only against all our competitors, but really against the government itself. And it's obviously a battle that we can't win as a business. Just want to give you a little bit of an example of the impact that the hydro rates have had on us. I'm not even go back 4 years, 5 years, anything like that. But just last year alone, when you look at our electricity bill, so our actual hydro usage, represented about 20% of our total bill. The global adjustment fee in 2015 represented 53.6% of our bill. What is a global adjustment fee? Many people, consumers and businesses, still have no idea what that is, because for consumers, that's just buried within their delivery costs and all the other things that are there. But that has to do with paying 85 cents a kilowatt for wind, for solar, all those different things. And as a business person, very simple to understand that I can't pay a higher price for something, pay 85 cents a kilowatt, and then sell something for 9 cents a kilowatt. Just doesn't make any sense at all. And because of the policies behind that, as manufacturers and consumers, we're the ones that are paying the price for that through the global adjustment fee, as well as whatever other things are buried in there. So in 2015, 53.6% was global adjustment fee, and all other charges was 26%. So the delivery costs and all the other debt that's buried in there. In 2016, our electricity billing represented only 12.5% of our total cost. So our actual usage only represented on the bill 12.5%. Global adjustment fee went from 2015 to 16 from 53.6 to 62% of our total bill, and then the delivery charges was 25%. For manufacturers, this is pretty tough because we're just playing with a moving target. We have no idea what to do, how to save, and frankly, we've done what we believe is our part. We've put in LED lighting, and when we're not there, the lights go off and the whole bit, spend $100,000 or whatever the cost was on that. And all sounds wonderful. But at the end of the day, the more I save, it appears the higher my global adjustment fee goes. So I can't really win, but I'm not the only one that can't win. It's all the other manufacturers that are being hit with this. Food and Beverage Ontario, I'm a part of that, which is the largest employer, really, the food manufacturing sector in Ontario. And we've been told by the government there are programs that are available to us and everything. Well, Kisco Products does not qualify for the ICI program because you've got to have a certain amount of consumption, 500 kilowatts per month consistently, whereas we peak at different times. But also, too, at the same time, my understanding is that you have to hire 2 or 3 people just to be able to figure out how to get the funding, even if you do qualify for the ICI, and then it makes absolutely no sense. The reward after hiring the people just isn't there. I think that really when it comes to the global adjustment fee, that's something that the government should be taking and funding themselves as an infrastructure cost, if it's something that they believe in, and not be downloading it on manufacturers and consumers. And just to let you know, my competition, obviously we compete globally. Everyone does in some way. And my largest competitor out of Chicago pays 66% less for their hydro than I have competitors out of North Carolina, so they'd be even significantly more. I just feel that we are just being battered. We're constantly being assaulted by bad policies by this government, and it's doing nothing to encourage manufacturing base to grow. When I hear, I read an article a week and a half ago from Brad Duguid, the Minister of Economic Development and Growth, and the comment was that I guess the article was on businesses leaving Ontario, and his comment, which just blew me away, was that for every business that leaves, there are 3 or 4 more that are coming to the province. And I thought, okay, you know what? As a businessman, I would never ever think of my customer in that way. I would think I want to retain my existing customer and then go +3 or +4, not go, let me add 3 and then lose 1. And I just think, I'm not sure if that was a quote that was taken out of context, and I certainly hope it was, because otherwise it just seems like absolute arrogance. And really and truly, manufacturing, not everyone can be an IT specialist that moves into this province or this country. And you have people, unskilled labor that do require jobs. And so we just feel that the government has to do something to address the situation. And I guess the last thing, just in closing, was, I was on Global News last week, and then I guess it was brought up in the legislature regarding by Todd, and apparently the energy minister took the liberty to pull up my hydro usage and information and share it in the legislature without any permission. I have no idea whether or not that's an acceptable practice or a normal practice, but I guess it is government and they tend to do what they want to do. So just thank you for this opportunity, and hopefully we can see some change.
Thanks, Mark, and I appreciate your passion for your industry as well. You did mention the fact that you don't qualify for the ICI program. The minister last week in question period said that you do. So let's bring in Jocelyn, who's from the Coalition of Concerned Manufacturers of Ontario and automatic coating in the Scarborough area.
Right.
And why you've become an expert over the last little while on the ICI program and how it's not working for a lot of manufacturers.
Unfortunately, yes, I have become an expert. I spent more time studying energy policy and electricity than I do running my business and growing my business, which is a complete shame. But I represent the Coalition of Concerned Manufacturers, which is a group of manufacturers that are very concerned with energy policy and the direction of the province. And we also have, like Mark, a small family business. We employ 75 people in Scarborough, and we've been in business for over 50 years. And we do corrosion coatings for the U.S. Navy, for pipelines, for anybody that needs large parts. And when the government made their announcement 5 weeks ago about electricity, I thought, okay, finally they're admitting there's a problem and they're going to do something about it. But unfortunately, when I got in and studied the the program that's available for us, which is called the ICI, which when you research it, it's head exploding. It's so complicated. And so the ICI program is designed, there's 5 peaks in the province. It's designed for industrial users that have over 500 kilowatts of peak hours a month, and you can apply for it. But the problem with the ICI is there's 5 peaks that the province hits over the year, and you have to figure out when those 5 peaks are. They don't tell you when those 5 peaks are. You have to go online and research it and figure out when those peaks are going to be. And you have to reduce your power consumption during those 5 peaks. But in order to hit those 5 peaks, you might have to power down your consumption upwards of 10 or 20 times, because as electricity peaks have evened out in the province, there's not as many high peaks and there's more moderate peaks. So you have to figure out when those peaks are, and then you have to shift your production. And for just-in-time delivery manufacturers such as our company, that's just not possible. We are the last leg of a manufacturing process, and typically they'll be trying to make up time. And I just can't go to my customers and tell them I can't produce parts on those days because we might be hitting a peak. And furthermore, I met with Toronto Hydro on Friday, and they told me that they couldn't recommend that I go on the ICI program because my global adjustment, which again, when you research the global adjustment, also head exploding, what's in there, the Green Energy Act and the other components that go into there, they couldn't tell me that my electricity pricing and my global adjustment charge might in fact go up. So they said it's a gamble, we can't recommend. So I came away from that meeting with 2 things. The other thing is you have to go through and shift your production, but you won't actually see savings until 2018. So really this program that was designed to help manufacturing, small to medium-sized manufacturers and many family manufacturers, because 80% of manufacturing in Ontario is 50 people and below, so a lot of family businesses won't see any benefit from this ICI program. So that's very troubling. And I'm paying about 20 cents a kilowatt hour, which is double or triple what I could pay for electricity in the United States, and this is a problem. In a recent meeting that I had with a group of manufacturers have with the Premier, I had indicated to her that I was her customer, and she corrected me and said no, that she was the Premier. And I'm telling you, I am a customer, and so are you, and so is everybody in this province. And it's time that the politicians in the province understood that they need to put service back in public service. Yeah. And as manufacturers, we don't feel that we're valued. We don't feel that we get the respect that we deserve. We employ people, and those people are able to pay taxes that allow the government to do the programs that they want to do. So the government might see us as a bunch of deplorables, but this deplorable is going to fight until we see good energy policy and good growth in both manufacturing and in business in the province. And I'm going to fight for my employees. I'm going to fight for their families. I'm going to fight for my kids, because the direction the government is going in Ontario, our kids aren't going to have jobs. And so we need to shift the paradigm back to growth, and we have to set the direction for the province so that we can be the great province that we once were.
Thanks, Jocelyn. So just to wrap this all up before we get to your questions, I have had a number of constituents across Ontario and in my riding email my office talking about those Hydro One home energy dashboard inserts, comparing your energy usage to your neighbors. And a lot of people consider that to be an invasion of their privacy, but I think we saw this go to a whole new level on Thursday, and Mark mentioned it when the Minister of Energy actually disclosed Mark's private billing information in the legislature, his energy usage in the House without his consent. So what I have done as a result is I've written the province's Information and Privacy Commissioner regarding the issue, and I'm asking him to look into it. As Mark mentioned, he doesn't know if that's acceptable behavior or not by the government. I don't either. I think it's something that the Information and Privacy Commissioner can look into. But the government continues to politicize the energy sector, and I think that has to stop. They're politicizing the energy sector to meet their communications need, and that has to stop now. So, thanks. Any questions?
Yeah, I'm hoping that both of you, Jocelyn and Mark, can talk about this a bit. So since you don't qualify for the ICI, I guess you're one of those businesses who sort of fall in that medium-sized range. So you're too big to qualify for the 17% cut, but you're not big enough to qualify for the ICI. So where does that leave you, and where does that leave all the manufacturers in that situation?
So I do qualify for the ICI, but the problem was that Mark doesn't, and a large group in the Coalition of Concerned Manufacturers don't qualify. So there was that middle child. We feel a lot of the manufacturers are the middle child that are completely left out. So they saw almost nothing in the recent announcements. And a lot of the manufacturers in our coalition are paying 17, 18 cents a kilowatt hour, and that's not going to change. So there was nothing in it for them. So Mark can probably talk to that.
I would say that when we look as well at our bill, it averaged out to, with everything, and probably around close to that 17 cents a kilowatt. And in regards to the ICI, yes, we do not qualify, but at the end of the day, it is that, as Jocelyn pointed out, it is so complex and requires so much work. And to be realistic, in my business, I'm very seasonal business, so we start full production in January. We're hiring seasonal staff. We have about 80 full-time, and we ramp up to about 220 staff. And we're running 3 shifts. And so with the ICI program, if I understand it correctly, I've got to be able to produce in a time when it's a downtime. Well, how do I do that? And even if I was running only 2 shifts, what do I do? Tell Loblaws and Walmart and Metro that, hey guys, I can get your stuff 2 weeks from now because I got to save on my hydro, so I'm only going to be running 2 shifts in the off time, right? It's not practical. It's obvious that the people that are involved in putting these policies together have no business experience and are living in a totally different world.
The government has said that the businesses in that middle group who don't qualify for ICI but don't get the 17% will still see 2 to 4% savings on their bills. What will that do for you? Will that help?
So we did some modeling and on some of the people in the coalition, and it would take their 17 cents a kilowatt hour, and it would just be in the rounding. So instead of 17.5, they might go down to 17.0, but it's still not a competitive rate. So what the Coalition of Concerned Manufacturers is asking for is an industrial rate, a competitive industrial rate, so that we can compete with those jurisdictions in the United States, because we're not competitive now. And to build on what Mark said, I had a $45,000 hydro bill. $6,500 was actually electricity, and $26,000 was a global adjustment. And that global adjustment from one month to another went up $10,000. And I can't imagine going to one of my customers and going, oh, guess what? I'm gonna have to charge you an extra $10,000 this month and have that be okay. It's really hard to plan. It's really hard to be a manufacturer in this province, and there is no cohesive manufacturing strategy to attract and maintain. And we're seeing 4 things happening. We're seeing companies close. We're seeing companies move to the United States. We're seeing companies move their growth to the United States, which is just as damaging as moving. And we're seeing companies that say, small family companies like Mark's and myself, that just say, I'm done. And they're selling out to larger multinational companies because they don't have a lobbyist, and they don't have a policy advisor, and we don't have a hydro person that can study the peaks and tell us when we have to power down. And so they're done, and they're selling out to large multinational companies, and so those Canadian family companies aren't going to be in Canadian hands any longer. And Stone Mill Bakery is a great example of that. They just recently sold out to Canada Bread, and that's owned by an international company. And if we want to see more of that, the policies of today's government are driving that direction.
Just quickly for Mark, what will 2 to 4% off your bill do for you?
Nothing. I mean, if I see that, fantastic. But I think Jocelyn has it nailed down, and it really, the whole thing is just really unfortunate, because I think that the stance that Food and Beverage Ontario has taken is that this is really, the global adjustment fee really should not be downloaded in the energy costs to consumers and to manufacturers. It really should be something that should be funded by the government, and remove that. And that, I guess that's really that'd be a huge solution that would once again allow us to become a little more competitive. And for my business, and like Jocelyn's, we're doing a fair bit of business in the U.S. And honestly, the only thing that's allowing me to be competitive right now is our currency exchange. That's the only thing. And for, we have continued to invest in infrastructure, capital expenditures in our business. Just over a year ago, we spent $1.5 million on additional automation and everything. And now, as my team comes to me and they say, "Hey, Mark, we want to do this, add this," and I'm going, "Okay, you know what, guys? Let's hang on a second. Let's just back off," because I truly have to look as my business grows. And as Jocelyn and other manufacturers have said, am I better off setting up shop or expansion? Because reality is I can't leave Ontario at this point, although the temptation is there. But expanding and putting my money in the U.S. There's all sorts of tax incentives, as we know, offered. But apart from that, all the overheads and the onerous regulations that are being downloaded on us constantly here are significantly less in the U.S.
I believe one of the analogies that I've used with a lot of people is the small to medium-sized business, don't have lobbyists, they don't have public affairs people. And I think our relationship with the government is sort of similar to my friend from high school. She's been married for 25 years. She walks by her husband in a brand new dress, and he says, "Hey, what's with the new dress?" And she says, "I've built my entire existence on you being completely unaware." And I think that's our relationship with the Ontario government. They've built their existence on us being completely unaware. And if you go out and talk to a lot of manufacturers, they didn't know what global adjustment charge. They don't know what the ICI program is. They pay their hydro bill because they don't think there's an alternative. They can't go to another hydro supplier. And so we need to change that. And that's what the coalition is doing. We're coming together, and we're fighting for energy policy that's competitive so we can remain in Ontario.
Thanks.